Welcome, you're listening to Passages. I'm Drew, and this is Jason and Tim here with me, and we are back from hiatus. I had a relative with a hiatus, and he got his esophagus stretched and worked out pretty good after that.
That's good to hear.
That is
but
good.
That was a good hiatus we had because of Thanksgiving.
That's right.
So we ate lots of turkey and
A little break.
had some time with
Time
family.
off. Yeah.
I hope you guys had a good Thanksgiving. Of course, we're acting like we haven't seen each other since the last broadcast, but we practically live together. So
We live in
We-
passing anyway.
yes,
That's it,
yeah,
yeah.
we
How are
see
you?
each other
How are you
in
doing?
different
We see
events.
each other with some degree of frequency. So
We've been in the
that's
same
good.
room a few times.
We have. That's good.
But it's good to be podcasting again. This is episode 6, and hopefully our listeners know the routine by now. We get warmed up with a few stories, and we haven't started with Tim yet, so why don't you go first? You
All
do
right.
the honors.
Thanks. So, my first story today, it came sort of in an odd way. Based on my tendency to not prepare for things, I was still sort of hunting around earlier today, and so I have to go back in the office now. I have to wear big boy pants and things like that 3 days a week. So
Do we want to explain that you work from home for...
Yeah, I worked
3
from home
years.
for 3 years, right? So mostly I worked in a T-shirt and shorts, and and would roll out of bed and be at work in 5 minutes, and it's taken some adjustment, but it's been good in ways. I think Millie likes to see me a little more when she doesn't see me so much. So that helps. Everybody needs a little space every now and then, and working from home creates a limitation of that.
Distance makes the heart grow fonder.
think so.
I think you're starting to tell things, Tim, you had
Yeah.
not planned on
Well,
telling.
back to the story and how I got to it. So I was on the way to the restroom at the data center today, and there's a TV in the break area right next to the restroom, and so this story was on like Channel 6 News or something, and so I went back and I'm like, I got to look that one up not because it's necessarily funny, but I'm going somewhere with this, right? So I found the story on the New York Post, published the 28th, that's yesterday. Where's the beef? UN calling on Americans to cut down meat consumption. And so this is a story, as you might guess, about climate change. We don't have to get into all the details of climate change and whether we ought to be good stewards of the planet and things like that. But this whole story is about the fact that the UN Food and Agricultural Organization has decided that one of the next pushes they're going to make is to try to tell over-consuming meat countries that they ought to consider more of a plant-based diet. And when I saw this, Jason, I thought of you a great deal because I know your fondness for green leafy vegetables.
Well, the level of rage I'm already feeling inside is, you can mess with a lot of things, but don't take the hamburger away.
Yeah.
And this is coming from the UN?
Right. And
you
so,
say?
yeah. And so I'm not saying that, I couldn't do with one less serving of red meat a week. It wouldn't be a bad thing for me. But as I listened to this story, and it said that food system emissions deserve a place at the top of the table alongside energy and transport, as they represent an estimated third of greenhouse gas emissions and 40% of methane. And they're saying, basically if we move to more of a plant-based diet, that that somehow the climate will improve.
Are these the same people, though, that told us that cow flatulence was leading to global warming?
Well, funny you should say that, because I'm wondering when I read that, and that statement just said
food-based emissions,
40% methane.
Yeah. Or methane.
What is
depending
What
on
are
how
we
you pronounce it.
replacing the meat with? Beans?
I think beans and
The magical fruit?
That's true. But
So
it's
I see a
Tofu,
conflict.
perhaps?
But we're taking out of the mix the cow and the methane that he apparently emits.
So the moral of this story, folks, is buy a farm, buy cattle. They're coming
Yes.
for your
Right.
beef.
So here's the deal, right? Is this is the reason I brought this one up, other than just because I knew it would be irritating.
It's there.
But I thought, I was just wondering the thought process that these people at the UN Food Association or whatever went through when they said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to tell Americans, stop eating meat, right? Because
that's a good word.
They're a very compliant group, right? And if we just tell them it's for the good of the planet, that it will drop median temperatures a half a degree a year if you all, basically cut, let's say, half of your meat out of your diet.
And I know, we have 370 million people in the United States of America. That's a lot, but it's not the billions that live in other countries that are known polluters and emitting greenhouse gases.
Yeah, and so, we can go around all that. But I just thought, do you think those guys just said, we're going to say this just because it gives us something to say? I mean, we know nobody's going to listen to this.
Then they got in a jet and flew over the Atlantic.
Yeah. Or do they have like a handler at the UN? I'm convinced that everybody needs like a handler that would say, you don't really believe anybody's going to listen to that, do you?
And not a yes person, but somebody that'll say,
people
do
live
you
in
hear yourself?
Bubbles.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well, the only way they're getting the Baconator out of these hands is prying it out of my cold, dead hands.
And it's like, listen, you might be able to tell me, make a move from a gas-powered car to an electric car, and one of these days, if the cost is all right and the efficiency works or whatever, sure. I mean, and the vehicle operates and all that kind of thing, and they say you're a better, citizen of the planet if you do this. Okay, if it
Until
makes,
you got to throw that battery away.
If it makes business sense, right? And then I've got it in my garage next to that battery. I'm not really sure what to do with that I took out of my car, but I think I can take it down to O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Well,
who, if they're willing to be a sponsor of this podcast, are welcome to do so.
You just sang the jingle, sort of.
The scary thing about this is, guys, I can't remember the last time I ate something green.
And see, that's why
I'm not even sure at the Thanksgiving holiday
that's why I thought
had
of you.
any green vegetables.
Yeah, that's why I thought of you, because
my plate was fall colors.
I envision in this room that Drew could go plant-based if he had to. Right?
No.
He could go plant-based, and he'd wash it down with those foo-foo waters and things that he drinks and stuff.
Are you talking about LaCroix?
LaCroix. Yeah, I'm talking about LaCroix. And if LaCroix is listening to this podcast, they're welcome to be a sponsor.
Yeah. And Wendy's with the Baconator. I would gladly eat one a week to
and
talk
we'll
about
actually
you.
crack open a LaCroix to begin each of our podcasts. And then I see myself as being second in line here, as second most likely to be able to live a plant-based life.
There's no way I'm making it, guys.
You wouldn't make it a day.
No.
You know who benefits from this policy? Is McDonald's. They quit serving meat about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
See, that's what I would do.
Meat.
That's what I would do. I've got myself convinced that, McDonald's still has meat in those burgers. So I could go plant-based by just driving through there every day.
You don't even know what you're eating there.
I don't know what it is.
No.
But if it's not meat.
They may be behind this whole
What
thing.
else could it be? It can't be like a rock or something.
Like,
I mean, it's
I
got
literally
to be
have a
plant-based, right?
freezer at home that's full of red meat, and we thaw it out and have it.
Well, I'm just
all the
saying,
time.
You might want to put a master lock on that, and don't leave the key to it in the
It
fellowship hall at the church.
Sounds like I need to get the fences built up
Okay,
on the
can
back
I go
40.
here? Tim brings this up. This was what I was going to contribute tonight.
All right.
I just want to
go for it.
This is going to be a loose discussion. We're going to have to come back to the meat thing again because I have so many ideas popping on that.
All right.
But, people often wonder what I do for a living. Right? They understand somewhat the process on Sunday. He's got enough to keep him busy on Sunday, but What in the world does this guy do with his
What
time?
consumes
the
the
rest
other
of the
6
week?
days
I
of
mean,
the
he
week?
just gets up and talks on Sunday, so what does he do the rest of the time?
Yeah,
right?
Wednesday
I mean,
nights, we'll give him a pass. He does a little work
Yeah,
on Wednesday
yeah.
nights.
Yeah, just tonight about 3 minutes of work. But
It was
so
a good
I'm gonna
3,
give you a
and we're going to revisit
Mr.
your
Drew?
3 minutes in a minute.
Oh,
Mr.
boy.
Drew,
Oh, boy.
what do you do for a living?
so let
How
me
many
give you a
times have you
glimpse.
heard that
Somebody's
question?
I've
been
heard
known
it.
to say.
I've heard
I'm
it.
a preacher. No, what do you do for a living?
But what do you really do? I
A
mean,
glimpse into the life of a local minister. So a couple things. And I'm assuming certain individuals don't listen to this podcast. So
and if they begin to listen,
Assumption can be a problem at
if
times.
you might want to, if you want to write down a list and they start listening, we'll remember, get rid of episode 6.
okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Well,
Proceed.
so this is free form. I don't know. Y'all stop me when I run out of time. Okay.
All right.
I got
So
all
one thing
the
you
time
mentioned
in
the
the world.
dumpster keys. So let's talk about that. We have
Travesty.
a nice, good-sized dumpster
Travesty.
for the church, and the keys for this were hanging in the kitchen on a thumbtack on a keychain that had an 8.5 by 11 laminated sign
That
attached to them
says,
that said
A very subtle sign.
I belong in the kitchen.
yes.
It's real subtle.
For some reason, we put every key to the dumpster on that ring,
So
and there were
we-
about 8 or 10 of
So
them.
we had multiple keys made for safety purposes, but our strategy was to put them all on the same
We
ring.
put all our eggs in the same basket.
I believe that's the...
We never dreamed that we could lose a key chained to a sign that says, "Don't take me."
I mean, we could only done better if it was chained to a cement block.
Next time,
Right.
we're just going to put it on a toilet seat. And you have to, like at the gas station down
Yeah,
here, where they
exactly.
give you the key attached to a toilet seat.
That's a good idea.
I like it.
Well, we lost it. Been looking for it for weeks.
And
Can't find it.
We have
And-
asked the congregation in multiple ways.
And painfully, I have been blamed by multiple people that they thought I had the key.
now,
I do not have the key. I've checked.
because we all come clean, right? I've done in the past what I like to refer to as dumpster audits.
A survey, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to be
and
sure.
in fact, to the leadership group, I really sort of volunteered my services as dumpster deacon.
I like it.
To make sure that people weren't abusing the use of the dumpster and that it wasn't getting filled up before big events and things
Right.
like that.
Thank you.
And so at times I might open it up, do a dumpster audit, and maybe I've got a thing or two in the back of my car that I might need to drop
Perhaps.
in. But there's plenty of room in there, and I know the rules. Don't drop stuff in there before Fellowship
An event,
Sunday.
yeah.
Right before pickup.
Pickup runs on Wednesday. So if you open it up and it's half full on Tuesday, go back to the house and get some stuff. Because
Fill that puppy up.
Right. I mean, it's the Lord's money.
And from time to time, we might call one another and say, "There's still room in the dumpster."
Right. And from time to time, it might get so full that somebody sitting at this table might actually get in it and jump in it.
Well, you can't leave the lid propped open, Tim.
to make it. But anyhow, we digress slightly.
Yeah, we did.
Back to the story of the missing key.
So here are the kinds of things that I do during my days. I walk back to the kitchen. There are flies buzzing around because there are bags of trash full of food that can't be thrown away by our custodians because they're locked
They
out of the
cannot
dumpster.
be put in our empty dumpster.
There is one place I know where I can get a key,
But we can't really.
and it's from two guys that live in a car in our parking lot. Now, these guys were given permission half a year ago to park there a few nights. They're still there. And when their trash started piling up, we gave them a key to the dumpster because we had a bit of a raccoon problem over there in that corner.
And we had plenty of extra keys on that one key ring to give out.
And we thought we could spare them a key, get rid of our raccoon problem, which was exacerbated by a woman who thought she was helping by putting cat food out for the raccoons, which drew more raccoons.
Also known as raccoon food.
Yeah.
C.
Oh, the old ringtail.
Also C, heading raccoon food. So I go down there.
Now we've got a problem in the Leeds area with raccoons that go around going meow meow meow.
I have
meow,
to
meow.
borrow a key. I have to borrow a key from
Pretty sure one of them's named Foo Foo Poodles.
these guys living in the car in the parking lot to open our dumpster. And then I go back and return the key as if they're paying for the dumpster. Because if I don't, we're going to have a raccoon problem.
Right.
That's one example.
Hey, could you go ahead, since we're dealing with those guys, would you tell the story about basically that they've sort of become the wardens of the dumpster? I mean, they don't really have to anymore because we can't get in it, but...
Well, yeah, I was borrowing my key from them. And they said, we didn't want to say anything, but we sit here and watch. And I don't know if you know this, but members will come by from time to time and get the key and put their personal trash in the dumpster. And to that I said, you know what? Thanks for letting me know.
But you know what? As you just told that
They never said
story-
anything about a guy in a big gray truck, did they?
I didn't ask for a description because I didn't
or a
need one.
2004 Ford Explorer.
Slightly used.
May it rest in peace.
Moment of silence.
So
we're back.
As you told that little tidbit, and you've told me that before because I asked you for the story, right? It does draw to mind, what if we took a church directory out there and maybe they could put the finger
guys.
on who's got the dumpster key?
Oh, picture directory. I think that thing has
the
got thrown
mystery.
away. That's what happened. Somebody dropped it
set
in the
it on
dumpster.
top, dropped it in the dumpster. It had to happen that way. Hey, but that's just one example.
All right.
I had a
When
second.
are you making your
I could do
your
this all
weekly
day.
trip to Lowe's to get some bolt cutters so we can get that thing off?
We've got new keys now.
Okay, sweet.
So we're all set. Today,
Can I have one?
so I handle the benevolence.
My wife saw
And,
you today, and
Millie,
that's where
I
your
got a
story's
witness.
going.
I got a witness. So doorbell rings. That means Drew has to stop his work to go attend to
whatever it may be.
Who knows?
Well,
what's
we
behind
all
that door.
know you're in there spinning in your chair in circles.
Yes. Our secretary, Crystal, I hear her down the hall say, "Drew, it's one of your friends." So I get up, I go to the door.
Thinking it's Tim or Jason.
No.
No.
Y'all are usually busy this time of the day. And it's a repeat offender whom I told never to ask for things again because she had abused the privilege of asking for help. I won't get into what she had done, but she'd crossed the line, okay? Well, she had something today that I couldn't say no to. She hobbled in there and she said, "I need to see your secretary and then I need to talk to you." And I said, "What do you need to see my secretary for?" She said, "I was bitten by pit bulls and it bit me on my backside and I want to show her so she can tell you." And I said, "You seem to think I'm not believing you, but I don't have to have her look to believe what you're saying. I trust you." She said, "Well, I want to show her. What's she doing?" I said, "I'll tell you one thing she's not going to do, and that's look at your backside." So I sat her
Not
down and
in
talked to her
the
about what she
secretarial
needed.
job description.
She was asking for some antibiotics, gauze, medical supplies, gas to go to the doctor, piling it on. It looked like we were going to need to go to the gas station and to Walmart. And I said, "Okay, we're going to help you out. We're going to take care of this. You're going to be all right." And she said, "Let me go in there and show her." I said, ma'am, she does not want to see your backside. She said, well, reach down here and feel it. And I said, no, thank you.
I've already committed to give you the money.
Please. I said, just get in your car. I'm going to take you down to the gas station, fill your tank up, and then we're going to go to Walmart. And I'm going to go inside. I'm going to get you a gift card that'll take care of everything that you need so you can get to the doctor and get well again. Well, she gets up like she can barely move and hobbles out to her car. We get the gas, and we go to Walmart, and I tell her, wait in the car while I go in and get your card. Because I made the mistake of letting people go in with me, and they're hanging over my shoulder and telling me I'm not giving them enough or whatever. It's not my first rodeo. Mm-hmm. So I'm in line at customer service to get the card, and I look, and here she comes in the door. She doesn't see me, but I see her, and she's moving fine. She's power walking, looking for me. And that's about the time I see Millie. I bump into Millie in the store, and I said, I'm looking for this woman. I'm trying to do some benevolent work here, but I've lost her in this big store. And I had to run to catch this woman.
Millie said you said, there she is, and took off.
Yeah, I had to bolt.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And I found her and gave her the card, and hopefully we've taken care of her until the next tragedy strikes. But, that's all my time, but those are the kinds of things that I do.
I really think I'm just going to stick to my normal 8 to 5.
Just the pit bull part of this, it's like, and then she was moving in the...
Why did the rapper singer bite her on the tush? That's what I want to know. Pit bull. Oh no, it was a dog, not the rapper singer.
Not the
entertainer of the year.
We didn't see the teeth marks, so we're not real sure.
Well, it could have been.
Crystal could have.
Could have been either one.
Could have been. Now she's going to return with the security footage. I asked her, please don't, but she said they got it on tape at the gas station. I'm going to bring it. I said, you don't have to prove this to me. But she'll be back.
The gift card is yours.
Yes.
Use it
Go
in
with
good
God.
health. Go with God.
Godspeed, dear woman. Please don't return.
Wow.
And she's not from around here either. She's not one of our local residents. She drives a long ways to come see me.
That's an interesting. I think I'll just stick to my normal everyday job.
It's not what they didn't tell us this stuff.
Did they
school.
teach you that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go to school for this stuff.
That's got to be 400 level stuff, I'm thinking.
It would have been
postgraduate.
Postgraduate
Yeah.
for sure. Master level, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't learn that.
Yeah, because I think that you've probably had to commit your life to it before they tell you that stuff, right?
Well, I tell you this, if they
Yeah.
get rid of meat, I'm going to be showing up at the door asking for something, not tofu. Y'all may just have to come see me at the funeral.
What if they brought Burger King back to Leeds and Moody and did that almost burger?
I'm telling you right now, if Burger King
or
comes
Crystal,
back,
that's also a non-meat product.
I think they pour it out in liquid form when they make those.
Yeah, it's like those liquid eggs.
Squares.
Look, Burger King could come back and it would still go back out of business. The only thing they ever had good was those giant metal slides that would burn the hide off your legs back in the 80s. That was it.
When they smell good.
They do smell
Burger
good.
King,
Yeah.
when you're on the road.
The flame grilled.
When you drive by.
Yeah.
Not
Beyond
once you
that,
get inside.
Man. Is it my turn?
It's your turn.
So
I'm not sure we're having turns tonight.
I don't either.
Mine is. But I yield the floor to
mine
Dr.
is
Pullum.
totally off task of our current discussion. But I've read an article today that freaked me out.
All right.
And I needed to bring it to y'all. Y'all know that I have a few phobias in my life. Some are rational, most are irrational. So I'm not going to read you the title of this article. Let me just start the article. Colin Blake and his wife had spent the evening in Marseille in the south of France. Sounds like a swanky place. When his toe swelled up and turned purple, just randomly out of the blue. Oh, this is hard to read. He later discovered he had been bitten by a Peruvian wolf spider which had laid eggs inside his toe. And despite having treatment to remove them, one hatched. A cruise ship passenger has told of his horror after discovering a spider had laid eggs in his toe, including one that hatched. Colin Blake and his wife were in the south of France. Their ship had docked on their 35th anniversary trip when his toe swelled up and turned purple. So the following day, he visited the onboard doctor, who told him a Peruvian wolf spider had bitten him and laid eggs inside his toe. They're not poisonous, but they're often found in the French port city after arriving on cargo ships. So he lives in someplace, I don't know.
Peru?
Told BBC Radio Scotland, so somewhere in Scotland, that his wife thought it may be because my new sandals, and they were rubbing on my big toe, and that was causing it to be red. But the doctor cut his toe open, causing the spider's eggs to pour out. After the holiday, Mr. Blake went to the hospital in the UK, where doctors prescribed antibiotics. But 4 weeks later, so we're looking 5 to 6 weeks after the event, 4 weeks later, he noticed something else unusual in his toe. On another visit to the doctors, they discovered one of the eggs had hatched into a small spider which was stuck underneath the skin. He said they believed the spider was making its way out, eating its way out of my toe. Mr. Blake chose not to keep the dead spider when asked by medics. So we have a lot of friends that take cruises, and they ask me, Jason, why don't you take cruises? And I throw out the obvious answers. I'm stuck on a boat with 4,000 or 5,000 people. That doesn't sound enjoyable, not even a little bit. If something goes wrong, I'm not a great swimmer. I'm going to drown. I will be the guy falling off the door in Titanic and looking up at Rose or whoever as I go down. But number 3, and most importantly, I might be bitten on the toe by a spider that lays eggs. Guys, I don't do spiders, and the thought of having
one inside
growing
your toe.
inside my toe.
Can you see it? Like it's like pressed up against the skin from the inside. Like,
and it's like
how do I get out
it's
of
got
here?
its little little
spider
leg
had
just
food for
scratching.
a lifetime supply
He's
of meat.
looking around. He's behind the nail, and he's like, "Can I get out through here?"
I'm telling you, the ship doctor would have just had to put a tourniquet on and amputate knee down. I'm getting rid of
Take
the
it off.
whole leg just in case.
Because they operated the first time and didn't get it off.
Yeah, no.
Can you
So
see
what
that
else are they
spider?
leaving?
And the nail of that big toe's like a window, and he's going like, and he's looking at. Can I?
Yeah.
I think I can
I'm
see
thinking
out through
of, like,
here.
him trying to push through the skin and it's kind of bubbling up there.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're lying
gets
in bed.
translucent as it stretches, and
you're
you
like,
see
what
that
is
hairy
that?
leg in there.
What do I feel moving in my toe?
Oh yeah.
Is that neuralgia? No, that's a spider.
But this morning I felt it on the top of my toe, and now
It's on the
feels like
bottom.
it's on the bottom.
My stomach feels funny. It's
No way, guys. And number one, how do you wait
kinda
4 to 5
tickling up
weeks
here on
after
my
you get off the
forehead.
boat to get the thing fixed anyway, right?
Yeah.
They're just amputating the whole leg.
I'm hearing a scratchy noise in my ear.
Nathan, are you listening? All right, and we are back and going to just jump into our quote tonight. So our quote this evening comes from Booker T. Washington, which I thought was cool because he has an Alabama tie-in. He's the first president at Tuskegee University. I've actually been to that campus. I helped do a diabetes screening down there in 2003 or 2004. Neat university. But a really wise man. He advised a couple of presidents in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Has done a lot of writing, but this quote I found I really like by him. It says, "A lie doesn't become truth, wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good just because it's accepted by a majority." And I thought that was a really timeless quote, and also a very timely quote, considering kind of the relativistic standpoint of the world today, where
Oh, very timely.
yeah, I thought it was really good. I split it up, the world into the world and kind of what the kingdom would say. The world would say lie, wrong, and evil, and the kingdom's filled with truth, righteousness, and goodness. And there's just a real big split there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It was an interesting quote. I think we are living in a time where at least there's this vocal, I don't know if they're a majority, but there's a vocal group that gets a lot of media attention and media time that is trying to tell us that lies are truths and that wrongs are rights and that evil is good. I don't know, that our society is just trying to really step away from the standard.
Right?
I had written
Woe
it
to
down.
those who call evil good and good evil. I'm probably getting.
So far, you're good. Yeah.
What's the second one?
It's 21. It says, "Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes," but it says, I didn't write down the whole thing.
Bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter.
And light for dark, I think.
Light for dark and dark for light. That's the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
Everything is the opposite. And, Christians are often the bad guys in a lot of debates and conversations. And righteousness is looked upon as unrighteousness.
Well, if you stand up today for what's in God's Word, for things that are scriptural, you try to define marriage as God defines marriage, or you try to define sexuality as God defines sexuality. There's a lot of those things that you could pick out that if you try to define them as God defines them, you are now looked at as being, what's the word I'm looking for? Insensitive,
intolerant,
bigoted, intolerant. I mean, you're looked upon as
I don't even
wrong.
think intolerant. I don't hear tolerance preached anymore, really.
No.
We're not asked to tolerate it. We're asked to endorse it.
And if you don't endorse it,
10 years
then
ago,
you're
it was
canceled.
all, let's tolerate one another. Let's be tolerant. But I don't hear accusations of intolerance and pleas for tolerance. Now it's, you've got to embrace this or you are an awful, evil villain of a person. And we're in times that our kids are going to have a really tough world to navigate.
Well, and there's not even room for debate or talk about it. You can't you can't
not
sit
welcome
down
at the table
and have a constructive conversation with somebody and be opposed to their idea and get along. You're either with them or you're totally against them. You can't even talk about your common ground because you're so focused on where you're uncommon or where you're different.
And I think this whole passage, right, with that dividing, I sort of drew on my paper here a dividing line, and the reason I did was I was thinking about, and maybe just because these are more of my adult years, the past 20 to 30 years, and how in the world view that line has shifted, right, and things that were just generally accepted as bad have changed in their level of acceptance. It's been a real shift, right? And
it's not just from bad to accepted, it's from bad to the most celebrated good.
Right.
I mean,
and it's what this quote is saying, right? It's not even like, we used to be very intolerant of this and now we're tolerant of it, right? It was bad and now it must be good.
It's what you should do.
And so
you are more
enlightened,
popular, more welcomed into society if you are doing these things.
And you're an enlightened person if you accept these things for what they're celebrated for.
Yeah.
And you're an evil person if you comment negatively
if you stand
against
where
it.
we stood 15 years ago.
Right. And I think a lot of the things that we're thinking about are they're issues that I mean, there are morality issues, right, that people deal with. There are life choices that people make. And I don't know that, sometimes when the three of us talk, we try to always look at two sides of a thing, right? And we try not to just say this is all, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, right? I mean, I don't think that's the right view. Let's be realistic about things, but let's also look at the flip side of a thing. And, I think sometimes we've not been as good in the past at hate the sin and love the sinner. And so some of the things that where we talk about intolerance and tolerance is not about acceptance, but that people who are dealing with some of these issues that we're talking about that have changed in their world's acceptance of them, I think in some cases we treat those people better than maybe we have in the past. I don't know if how you deal with all of this, right? Because it's like the world's changed in its view of it. I think sometimes we've changed in a realization that there aren't little sins and big sins. And so what a person's dealing with that we might have considered to be a big sin in the past, it's just what they're challenged with in the same way that we're challenged with something else. And so I think there's a whole lot to deal with here, but some of the scariest part of it is, what does this all mean to us? Accepted behavior, whether we want to deal with it or not, is a real challenge to our kids, our grandkids, the next 3 or 4 generations. And when something's accepted in the way that the world has started to accept things, more things that are sinful and against God's will, it's just another way it makes the behavior more mainstream, accepted.
Yeah, it's the majority. To use Booker T. Washington's his language. And wanting to fit in is such a powerful impulse. It's psychologically built into all of us. It's a survival mechanism. We walk into a group and we don't want to stand out. And that's helpful most of the time. We're, like I said, it's a defense mechanism. It's built into our biology, you might say, to fit in. And familiarity helps us socially. People aren't drawn to the unfamiliar. If you're in a group at somebody's house and somebody walks in the house and they just look outrageous in the way they're dressed and they're very flamboyant in their behavior, very different from everybody else in the room but in their behavior, everybody shies away from that person, or they try to master their control over their impulses and force themselves to be nice to that person until they really get to know the person and warm up to them. I mean, let's be honest, it's what we all do. Socially, we're just wired to fit in and to shy away from the unfamiliar. So that is what's happening to us and to our kids whenever we're in a place outside the church, outside the Christian faith, and sin is being celebrated. And, we have gay pride months, and we have other things where we're told not just to tolerate, but now to embrace.
But slowly,
that's a really tough thing to fight.
Well, and there's so much pressure to conform now to what the world is considering normal, that even the church, not I guess the religious establishments, we'll say that. That's probably a better way of saying it, are starting to embrace some of these changes to avoid, I think, simply to avoid the controversy behind standing up for the truth of what God's Word teaches. I mean, just in the last, week, the Pope has come out and said that, I think it was that the transgender, I was looking at an article about it when I was working on this, that he is allowing Pope Francis calls for the inclusion of trans people into the Catholic Church. There was another one that says the Vatican says transgender people can be baptized and can serve within the church. And even recently, there's been a big issue with the Methodist Church over this that's affected some of the congregations.
Basically fractured that denomination.
It has.
Yeah, and these are very delicate issues. I mean, what does he mean by transgender person? Is it because once a lot of these people are undergoing these changes when they're way too young to make these decisions, and then they later regret it, or I mean, it's a case-by-case basis, and I think Tim said it right when he said, hate the sin, love the sinner. We've got to understand that behind these big cultural issues are actual people with feelings and with backgrounds where they haven't learned things, or they've been caught up in some cultural trend and have been damaged and been hurt, or religious people have really hurt them, and they haven't seen the pure gospel, and they haven't seen Christian love. And we don't want to hate people.
No, it's our job to show the love.
That's right. And when I was a kid, and we were talking about these kind of issues, right? Like homosexuality and transgender and things like this. We had no idea what transgender was, But during that time, there might be talk about one person in town, two people in town, something like that. The point that I'm driving to here is what our kids are dealing with, like in school right now, and the number of people that are dealing with this or proclaiming what they are or whatever. This is the world that we're called to minister to, right?
Yeah.
This is not an isolated, well, I heard that, that Joe, and he's the only guy in town that, could possibly.
And what did the church do back then? I mean, they ignored Joe.
We did. Absolutely.
Right? And they didn't, because of the majority.
Right. Well,
right? It was a majority thing.
And
that was wrong, not to minister to people.
Right. And I think that our hearts have changed in some way toward that. Are we doing any better? I don't know.
But I do think
that we are.
I do think the way that.
But I tell you what, our kids better get better at it.
Yeah,
because that's gonna be, it's a significant group of the field that's out there for harvest.
So before we get too far away from what Tim said about when we were growing up, somebody was on me about not preaching over some petty issues that I really didn't feel were all that important. And I was being told that, the preachers of old, they preached on these subjects frequently, and you need to be preaching on it more. And I asked him, I said, did they ever preach on homosexuality? Did they ever preach on transgender issues? Did they ever preach on even cohabitation, abortion? No, 60, 70 years ago, these guys were in a different world. They're on a different planet. And we can't preach their sermons exactly to this world because it's like there's a disconnect there. That would be the easiest thing in the world for me to just cover the fundamentals of the faith every Sunday.
Yeah.
And I still cover those things. We still need to talk about them, but not to the exclusion of the tough issues that Christian people are grappling with and trying to make sense out of in light of Scripture.
Well, and one thing, even growing up in the community I grew up in and the church background I grew up in as a child, we did a horrible job of ministering to these folks. I mean,
Yeah.
we were the most, I think of the religious establishment of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s as being highly judgmental towards these, dealing more against the people than they were the problem. I mean, I can remember the way things were talked about even in my childhood. You just didn't associate. You just ignored them. You stayed as far away
Mocked
from them as you
them,
can.
made fun of them, bullied
And
them.
you know, if Christ had shown up, he'd have slapped us upside the head, and he'd have walked into their establishments. He'd have taken them to meals and had talks with them. He'd have loved those people. You know, he got mocked and maimed in his work here for eating with sinners and tax collectors, and that's our duty today, is not to isolate ourselves from these people. I think we try to sit down and have some level of communication with them and try to not necessarily find a common ground, because if I believe what God says in Scripture, the only common ground can be found in Scripture. But at least we've got to sit down and show love and patience and kindness and peace
we're
and gentleness and meekness and self-control with them. I mean, that's what we're commanded to do.
We're shifting away from Booker T. Washington, but tying what you just said into the quote, you've just put that in a very small minority, because you got the majority of the world championing immorality, the majority of religious people, not to paint with too broad a brush, I guess that's what I'm doing, but, you know, assuming the majority of religious people are not ministering to folks in this condition, and then in between you got Christ saying, don't endorse, but love the people and minister to them and show them a different way. That's right. A sliver of a minority right there.
Right. And I didn't, maybe it's sort of obvious where our mind goes in relation to this. I didn't want to try to drive this to just being completely about sexuality, but you know, I think this is one of those things
that's where the majority is right now, right?
There's been that big shift, right? And you know, one of the biggest things that I feel like the shift has caused is that if we're going to minister to people who are dealing with homosexuality, one of the things you've got to come, I mean, the fundamental is you've got to tell those people at some point what you're doing is sinful. And that's the part that the way the world has shifted is you can hardly say anything worse than that to utter it out of your mouth, right? Is to say, you know, the world is saying this should be celebrated. This is good behavior. You know, you go with this. God tells us, I mean, it's not like we're trying to say this isn't real. This is not a challenge that, you know, like any other temptation that people face, that it's not a real thing. But I think the challenge that we have to minister to these folks, when you relate it back to that line between good and bad and what the world calls right and wrong, and when I think about where's it headed for our kids and the fact that there's more and more people in this group, you know, that are falling into, you know, identifying in this way, is that's where the rubber meets the road, is that eventually if you're going to minister to these folks from the perspective of forgiveness of sins, becoming part of the church, being saved, you know, then you've got to deal with this is a sin that you and it's That's repulsive to the world to say that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you can't just say that kind of thing on your social media platform of choice. And you can't just say that thing holding up a sign behind the game day crew or wherever or protesting against it. The only way you have that conversation in a loving way is to build relationships, friendships with the people around us.
That's right.
That's right.
Because that's something that's totally different from our childhoods too. We all know people who are in this situation, have friends
family,
that are, absolutely.
People that I love, people that I'm friendly with, people that I enjoy being around. It's just, so we're willing to make that connection.
That's right.
Now, true confession, am I willing to go that next step? I ain't done it yet.
And the part that's hard about it is doing it with love and remembering our number one role is to spread the gospel of Christ, to point people to God's word, to teach people the truth. What they do with it is on them.
Yeah, and that truth hasn't changed. It's not going to change. Do you guys realize how few people even know what the Bible says? Not just on the subject of homosexuality, but on any subject. People are so biblically illiterate that I don't think they realize the Bible's position. It's waning, but there's still an appreciation for the Bible as an idea in this country. Now, it's not anywhere, the numbers are really scary. When you look at people who think the Bible is God's Word, it's way down from where it was in the 90s. But there's still a majority of people who will say the Bible's God's Word, or the Bible should be listened to, or there's value in the Bible, or ethics are in the Bible. They have no idea what it says. You would be stunned at how many people do not realize there are 6 passages in the Bible that blatantly describe homosexual behavior as sin. People don't know that. And then there's the more delicate issues that we've brought up. Not to mention a lot of other things that we haven't brought up as examples. We keep getting on the sexuality thing, but you can't help but think about that when you have Gay Pride Month.
Well, there would be a lot of people surprised to know that Christ went against culture, went against the Jewish faith, when he stopped at the well and talked to a Samaritan woman. I mean, that was crossing not just racial boundaries, that was crossing gender boundaries, because this was, the apostles were marveled that he was talking with her, you know, or, there's these stories of Christ doing these wonderful things that they don't focus on, and a lot of that is angry, self-righteous, judgmental Christians will post these horrific verses out of context to their Facebook pages because they don't have to have relationship, they don't have to have conversation, and they post it, I think, out of anger, out of self-righteousness maybe, and it just stirs people up, and people see that and they think that's the church. Guys, the church is full of a whole lot of sinful people. We may not be dealing with homosexuality, we may not be dealing with transgenderism in the church, in this church, but we've got liars, we've got sinners, we've got adulterers, we've got every other sin under the sun that's just as sinful as the other. It's just not as cool and open. And who are we to necessarily judge people? God's going to judge. God's word, my job's just to show it to people and say, this is what God says. And if you do that,
and our job,
you're doing all you can do.
And our job's to try to get better at the sins that we have problems with, right? And that we struggle with, right?
Of just being willing to talk to our friends. You know,
you got one guy practicing homosexuality on one hand, and a guy on the other hand hating him. They're both in a bad place.
That's right.
Yeah. And both of them need somebody to talk to them.
And I'm not sure which one of those sins is easier to overcome. I'm not sure.
The hating side of it's the hardest part.
Yeah. So
I wrote this down. I don't want to lose this as we talk about this, because my thought is, 25 years from tonight, after this podcast has become a worldwide phenomenon, and we decide that it's time for us to step aside and we pass this on, and
you better
and
say
Jack,
15 years.
Well,
yeah, 25 years. There's a chance we ain't here.
Yeah, there is that chance, right? But in the midst of this dream, there was some fitness that began or something. I don't know. But
now, that's one thing that will not happen.
Miracles of science.
Yeah, trying to fitness in my mouth, this donut. All right. So 25 years from tonight, Jack Kaiser and Jonathan Layton and Sam Pullum are sitting at these respective mics, and what's the world look like then? How has that line shifted? Where do we go next? Is sort of the question of, there's always change, and you'd like to think that maybe you go so far in one direction and you make your way back. Is that going to be the case?
There a pendulum?
Is there a pendulum, or are we just headed off the cliff?
Well, wherever it changes, the majority's probably going to be wrong.
Absolutely.
Probably going to be wrong.
Well, and I always draw some sense of peace from the fact that when God is talking about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's having this negotiation with Abraham. Abraham's like, now, if there's 50 righteous people, and he's like, no. They couldn't find 10 righteous people in these two enormous cities. So sin is not new.
That's
the
right.
world
and Lot
being,
was one of the righteous ones,
right.
and he was kind of a bad dude.
Lot and his family, and the wife didn't make it out of the city, of the city's sight before she had problems.
And we have to call ourselves sometimes, and not be part of the "it's never been worse than this" crowd, because you just named a time that it was a whole lot worse, and we're not even talking about Noah, right? Got down to 8, right? So,
and that was in the whole world,
right? In the whole world. So it's been worse. The part that scares me is I think about our boys and our girls, and and what they're going to, the world that they're going to face. And we've lived a good chunk of our life, and the church has remained where we live strong, relatively strong, relatively similar to what it was when we were kids or when our parents were kids. What's it going to be next, right? This is some of the serious challenge that we have for teaching these kids, right? And I struggle with this some days, and it's like I've tried to really impress on Jonathan, the importance of doing things like being a good friend to others and treating people right, and but then I worry sometimes. It's like, how sound doctrinally have I made him? You can't make anybody do anything, right? But we train these kids, right? It's like, how solid have I? Has my leadership been on here? Because we're all made by the experiences that we've had, and we've all gone through life, and we've had some interesting experiences. And, there's been times I know that, all of us may have said, I'm not going to do it that way, or I'm going to do it that way, and I think this is every generation, right? Every generation reacts to, I think I can do this better, right? If I didn't think it was better, I wouldn't have done it that way, right? In terms of like things like the way I run my house and the way I train my son and things like that. But now when I get to like 14 and I know I've got, about 4 years left, and then he's out in the big world and I have some influence on him, but I don't have this kind of influence on him, it gets scary sometimes thinking about, and it's a combination of, have I trained him in the right way? And what's this world going to be like that he's going to be faced with? How much more difficult is it going to be than what the three of us are facing right now?
Mm-hmm. I just think it all boils down to the greatest command and the second one. I mean, there's a lot of doctrinal things that I believe Scripture teaches us we have to follow. But if I can teach my kids 2 things, and I can only leave them with 2 things, it's love God with every piece of your being, heart, mind, soul, spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because without those things, if we miss that, it doesn't matter how many I's we've dotted, how many T's we've crossed in our walk coming through life. If we miss love, we've missed it all. And it's what Paul says. That's what I was going to read. It's what Paul says here in 1 Corinthians 13:3. He says, if I have all of these things, prophetic powers, understand all mysteries, all knowledge, if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I'm nothing. If I give away all I have and deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It's not insistent on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. It never ends.
It rejoices with the truth.
If we don't have love, it doesn't matter what we're doing. But if we have love, God shows us how to talk to people. If we go to people and we confront them out of love, then no matter how they take it, we've done it right. We're righteous because we can only control what we can control. I can control sharing the love of Christ with other people. I cannot control how they respond to that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we always go off into these directions I don't expect. I
didn't
looked at the quote, and I guess I kind of thought a little bit about culture and what I was going to say. I didn't know we'd spend that much time on it, but I think it's been a good discussion, and we'll be continuing the discussion, I'm sure, for hopefully years to come until the boys can take over the podcast. But until then, we're going to be here every week, except when we take a hiatus for holidays, which another one's coming up soon. And we'd like for you to keep sharing it, telling your friends about it. We love feedback. Love to get some reviews and ratings on iTunes or Spotify. Haven't got an actual review yet on iTunes, so you can be the first to do that. That helps us get out there to more people. But whatever you can do, we appreciate it. We appreciate you listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Passage.